The leader of the Czech Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, has been a controversial figure in Russia for many years. While he is widely known as a former rebel who switched sides and became an ally of the Russian government in the early 2000s, he has also been accused of many human rights abuses, such as persecution of political opponents and suppression of dissent. Even though he has been known to be a supporter of Putin, in recent years, Kadyrov has clashed with the Russian military and security services, which further highlighted a growing divide within the Russian government. So in today's video, we will be looking at Kadyrov's rise to power, his relationship with the Russian government, and the reasons behind his recent confrontations with the military. In order to understand where and who Kadyrov is, it's important to look at his country, Chechnya, and its history with the Soviet Union. This all started in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and Chechnya declared its independence from Russia. Despite that, there were a series of conflicts between the two countries, up until 1997 when a peace treaty was signed. Despite that, the newly independent republic became increasingly ungovernable as its warlords grew closer to Wahhabism. With cross-border incursions into Dagestan and a series of bombings in Moscow in 1999, the Chechens offered Vladimir Putin sufficient cause to launch a second Chechen war. During this war, Akhmat Kadyrov, along with his son Ramzan, pledged alliance to the Kremlin and Putin, as they were reportedly tired of the warlords and alarmed at their turn towards Islamic internationalism. The Kadyrovs fought on both the sides of the Russian forces and even went on to form a faction of militia known as the Kadyrovsky. Once the war was over, Akhmat Kadyrov became president of Chechnya, but that didn't last long as he was assassinated in 2004. From then and up until 2007, two interim presidents served Chechnya, up until Putin appointed Ramzan Kadyrov as president. Ramzan was tasked with defeating the insurgency, and this was only made possible with considerable funding from the Kremlin. The Russian government allowed Kadyrov the freedom and the money to do as he pleased with his country, while also making him indebted to Putin. During his presidency, Kadyrov has been accused of various human rights abuses, such as the torture and murder of political opponents and the suppression of dissent. Despite these allegations, he has remained a key and loyal ally of the Russian government, some even going as far as calling him Kremlin's puppet. He continues to receive significant financial support from Moscow, and has been busy cultivating a strong cult of personality, with billboards and murals of Kadyrov appearing throughout Chechnya. Kadyrov's relationship with the Russian government has been a complex one. Yes, he is an important ally of the Kremlin and has been credited with bringing stability to Chechnya after years of conflict and war. Kadyrov has been very vocal about his support of Russian President Vladimir Putin and even described himself as Putin's foot soldier. But in recent years, there have been signs of tension between Kadyrov and the Russians. For example, in 2015, Kadyrov stated that he was tired of his job as president of Chechnya and threatened to resign from the position. This sparked rumors that he was becoming unhappy with his relationship with Moscow. In 2016, he went as far as publicly criticizing the Russian military and security services by accusing them of carrying out illegal detentions and torture in Chechnya. Kadyrov has also suggested that Russia's security services were the ones responsible for the assassination of Boris Nemtsov, a prominent opposition politician who was killed in Moscow in 2015. Of course, the Russian government responded to Kadyrov's allegations and criticism and launched an investigation into his claims. But the investigation found nothing wrong. All it did was highlight the growing divide between Kadyrov and the Russian military. The tensions between Kadyrov and the Russian military escalated in 2019, when Kadyrov's security forces clashed with a unit of Russian National Guard troops in Grozny. The incident started with Kadyrov's forces attempting to seize a property that belonged to a local businessman. The man had reportedly refused to sell a property to Kadyrov's associates, so Kadyrov had decided to take matters into his own hands and take it by force. The Russian National Guard was called in to restore the order, but when they arrived at the property, they were refused entry by Kadyrov's security forces. The situation quickly escalated from there, and the two sides fired their guns at each other. The clash lasted for several hours and resulted in the deaths of 6 of Kadyrov's security forces and 3 National Guard troops. Later, Kadyrov claimed that the entire incident was just a misunderstanding, and that his men had not intended to attack the National Guard. But this incident sparked a lot of outrage among Russian officials, many calling for Putin to hold Kadyrov accountable for it. Others have suggested that the clash is a sign of growing tensions between Kadyrov and the Russian government, and that people should expect more confrontations between the two in the future. Instead of trying to smooth things in the aftermath of the clash, Kadyrov went on to issue a series of statements criticizing the Russian military and accusing them of being disrespectful towards Chechen people. He had also announced that he would create his own paramilitary force, the Kadyrovs, to protect Chechnya from external threats. Whether Russia was considered among those threats or not, it is not clear yet. The new paramilitary force has been described by many as a private army that is loyal to Kadyrov, and people have raised concerns that they could be used to suppress dissent and intimidate political opponents. Some analysts believe that the creation of the Kadyrovs is a sign that Kadyrov is seeking independence from Moscow to consolidate his power within Chechnya. Despite that, when the Russian and Ukrainian war started in 2022, Chechen forces have been deployed to Ukraine. Initially, they were to be focused on the Kiev line and were expected to perform collective punishment as part of the offensive operation. The Chechen units were also identified as the ones responsible for some of the crimes in Bucha. At the same time, they also appeared to have a role in disciplining their allies, the Russian units. There have been reports of Chechen soldiers executing Russian soldiers that were wounded in battle and even firing at those that retreat from the battle. Whether Kadyrov is playing some long-term game against Russia or has changed his mind since criticizing the Russian military, it is unclear. There have been tensions between the two countries, but there have also been a lot of help and funding shared between the two. If Kadyrov does plan to distance himself from Putin, it will be a long and tedious process, and it is unclear whether this would even happen during his lifetime. The situation in Chechnya is likely to remain volatile in the coming years, with Kadyrov's power growing steadily while Moscow attempting to maintain control over it all. This will probably result in further clashes and tensions. What do you think? Will Chechnya ever become fully independent from Russia? Or will Kadyrov continue to work together and for the Russian military and government? Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. And if you enjoy these types of videos, make sure to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to be notified each time we post new content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in our next video.